Welcome back to Ivory Secrets. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We drop new stories every week and you don't want to miss what's coming. Before we get into today's story, drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. We love seeing where our community is tuning in from across Canada and beyond. All right, let's get into it. She didn't say a word when she saw it. That was the part that stayed with everyone who witnessed it, the absolute stillness of Miriam Ashford. In that moment, champagne flute raised halfway to her lips, eyes fixed across the ballroom, at the woman standing near the east terrace doors, not frozen, not shocked, still. The way a chess player goes still when they realize, 3 moves in, that they've already won. The necklace around that woman's throat was a Burmese ruby set in platinum, flanked by 2 rows of old-cut diamonds, the center stone, the color of a pomegranate seed held up to winter light. It had a name, the Lacroix Heart, and it had belonged to Miriam's grandmother, who had carried it from Montreal to Vancouver in 1962, sewn into the hem of her winter coat, because even in the worst of times, certain things were not negotiable. The woman wearing it was 26 years old. Her name was Sasha, and she had absolutely no idea what she had just walked into. Miriam lowered her champagne glass. She smiled, and every person in that ballroom who knew her well enough would later say that the smile was the most frightening thing they had ever seen. Miriam Ashford was 51 years old, and she had spent the last 23 of those years building something from almost nothing. Not entirely from nothing. She was honest about that. Her late father had left her a small import business, a rented warehouse in Burnaby, and a reputation for reliability that meant something in certain circles. But the company that Ashford Trading had become by the time this story begins. That was hers. The expansion into the Asian markets, the logistics partnerships, the Vancouver headquarters with its glass atrium, and its view of the North Shore Mountains. All of it built on her decisions, her relationships, her 18-hour days when her children were small, and she had learned to schedule her crying for the drive home. She was not a woman who talked about sacrifice. She considered it a private matter. What she did talk about when pressed was her marriage, specifically about how good it had been, and she believed that right up until the moment she didn't. Her husband's name was Lawrence Ashford, a name she had given him, technically, since he had taken hers when they married. He was 4 years younger than her, handsome in a way that had seemed important once, and now seemed beside the point, and he had joined Ashford Trading 12 years ago as VP of Business Development. He was charming with clients. He was good at golf. He had an eye for talent, and he knew which relationships to cultivate at industry dinners. Miriam had genuinely valued all of that. What she had not anticipated, what she had, in retrospect, been extraordinarily stupid about, and she would not soften that word, was that Lawrence had also been cultivating a relationship with his assistant for the past 2 years. An assistant that Miriam herself had hired because she had good instincts about people, except, apparently, not always. She found out about it the way you find out about most things you've been trying not to see. Accidentally, completely, all at once. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, and Miriam was coming back from a lunch meeting early because the client had a cold and she hadn't wanted to spend another hour pretending not to notice. She walked through the executive floor, nodded at the receptionist, and was heading toward her own office when she heard Lawrence's voice behind the closed door of the boardroom they used for small meetings. She would not have thought anything of it, except that the voice she heard respond to him was not a voice that should have been in a meeting. She stood in the hallway for about 4 seconds. Then she kept walking. She went into her office. She closed the door. She sat down at her desk and looked at her hands for a moment, because there was a physical sensation she was trying to identify, a tightening across her chest that she initially mistook for anger and then understood was something older and more animal than that. It was the body's first response to the realization that something has already happened to you, something you can't undo, something that has already changed the shape of your life. Even though you are sitting here at your desk at 3:47 on a Tuesday, and nothing on the surface has moved, she didn't cry. She opened her laptop and she sent 2 emails, one to a corporate lawyer she trusted, one to a forensic accountant she had worked with on a due diligence file 2 years prior. She used careful language. She said she needed a comprehensive internal audit, confidential, starting immediately. She said she had reason to believe there may be irregularities in the business development accounts. She did not say why she suspected it. She had no proof yet that anything financial was wrong, but she knew Lawrence. She knew that a man who had been lying to her in one area of his life had very likely found it easy to extend that habit to others, and she had been watching the business development expense reports for the past quarter with a low, shapeless unease she hadn't known how to name. Now she had a name for it. She closed her laptop. She went home and made dinner, and when Lawrence came in at 7, she told him about the client lunch and asked how his afternoon had been, and he said, "Fine, busy?" And she said, "Same." And they ate pasta and watched 40 minutes of television and went to bed. She lay in the dark and listened to him breathe and felt the distance between them as something precise and measurable, like the distance between 2 points on a map. She slept well. This surprised her, later, looking back. But maybe it shouldn't have. She had a plan. And Miriam Ashford had always slept well when she had a plan. 3 weeks later, the forensic accountant called. He was a quiet, methodical man named Stephen, and he did not use dramatic language, which Miriam had always appreciated. He told her, in a voice as flat as a balance sheet, that he had found discrepancies in the business development accounts going back roughly 18 months. The total amount redirected through vendor accounts that did not appear to correspond to any documented supplier relationship was, conservatively, $430,000. He paused. "That's the conservative figure," he said. "What's the less conservative one?" Miriam asked. "Closer to $600,000 once we account for the shell account in Kelowna." Miriam wrote the numbers down on a notepad. She underlined them once. "Thank you, Stephen," she said. "Please continue." What Lawrence had done, what he had been doing for a year and a half, with the patience and incremental care of someone who had thought about this for much longer than that, was establish a series of fictitious vendor relationships, routing payments through accounts he controlled, steadily siphoning money from the company, her company, the company she had built on the reputation her grandmother had died leaving behind. There was also, Stephen mentioned, the matter of the company credit card. Miriam's name was on the account. She was the primary holder. The secondary holder was Lawrence, which had seemed reasonable at the time. There were charges she did not recognize, spanning back 8 months at hotels and restaurants, and, twice, a jeweler on Granville Street. She pulled up the jeweler's name on her laptop while Stephen was still talking. Rosenthal Fine Jewelry. She knew it. She had walked past it 100 times. She thanked Stephen again, asked him to put everything in a formal report, and ended the call. Then she opened the small file in the back of her mind where she had been storing certain observations without examining them too closely. The unexplained late evenings, the weekends Lawrence said he was golfing, the way his phone had started going face down on tables, and she let herself look at all of it properly for the first time. She let herself understand the full shape of it. She took a breath. She called her lawyer. "We need to move," she said. "I have everything. Do you want to proceed with the separation agreement first or the criminal matter first?" Miriam said, in that order. The Harbor Gala was an annual charity event benefiting at-risk youth programs across BC, held at the Hotel Vancouver every November. Miriam had sat on the planning committee for 11 years. She had a table. She had a dress. She had been attending since before Lawrence had any idea what the event was. This year, she almost didn't go, not because of fear or grief or any of the softer reasons people might have assumed. She almost didn't go because she had spent the past 3 weeks in back-to-back meetings with lawyers and accountants, and she was, genuinely, exhausted. She wanted to sit in her kitchen with her cat and eat leftovers and go to bed at 9:30. But her daughter called the night. Her daughter's name was Piper. 24. Sharp, studying law at UBC, and Miriam's favorite person on the planet, though she tried not to make that obvious. Piper had heard, through the way adult children hear things before their parents have a chance to frame them, that something was happening between her parents. She called at 9 p.m. and said simply, "Mom, go to the gala, wear the Lacroix Heart Let him see you. Miriam was quiet for a moment. The necklace is in the safe, she said. Is it? Another pause. It should be. It was a Chubb double-lock model, built into the wall of her dressing room, and the combination had never been shared with anyone. She was certain of that. But Piper's tone had contained something specific, not a question so much as a direction. And so Miriam walked down the hall and turned the dial, and when the door swung open, she looked at the shelf where the Lacroix Heart had lived for 23 years in its gray velvet box. The box was there. She opened it. The necklace inside was a very good imitation, platinum setting, reasonably convincing. Rubies, diamonds that wouldn't survive a loop. Someone had gone to considerable effort and expense to make sure she wouldn't notice unless she was looking. Miriam picked it up, turned it over, set it back down. She was not surprised in the way she might have expected to be. She was angry, a clean, clarifying anger, the kind that doesn't cloud your thinking but sharpens it. And beneath the anger was something she recognized as grief, the particular grief of realizing that a violation had been going on without your knowledge, that you had been safe in the assumption of something that was already gone. She let herself feel it for exactly as long as it took to set the imitation back in the box and close the safe. Then she called the jeweler, not Rosenthal on Granville, a different one. A woman named Claire, who had been authenticating and repairing pieces for Miriam's family for 30 years. She explained the situation in brief, factual terms, and Claire said she would check her database. She called back in 40 minutes. I had a man come in about 6 weeks ago, Claire said. Brought the heart in for, he said, an insurance appraisal. He was here for 2 hours. He seemed very interested in the metalwork. I didn't sell him anything, but he spent a long time with it. A pause. I should have called you. I'm sorry, Miriam. I assumed it was a family member. What did he look like? Miriam asked, though she already knew. She did not blame Claire. She thanked her. She hung up. She sat with the information for a while and turned it in her mind, and understood that Lawrence had not acted alone. A replica of that quality required a skilled craftsperson, time, and money. Money that had come from her own accounts, and she understood what he had been planning. He had intended to walk away. He had been preparing to walk away for at minimum a year, quietly liquidating what he could, covering his tracks, replacing what couldn't be liquidated with convincing substitutes. He was going to take everything he could carry and leave her with the appearance of what she had built. It was, she thought, almost impressive in its ambition. Almost. She called Piper back. You were right, she said. I know, Piper said. What are you going to do? I'm going to the gala, Miriam said. Can you meet me at the hotel at 7? She had a piece made. Not a replacement. She was clear with the craftsperson her lawyer connected her with, a man in Gastown who specialized in estate jewelry restoration. She explained exactly what she needed and why, and he understood immediately, and he worked through the night. By 4 p.m. the following day, she had in her hands a piece that was not the Lacroix Heart, but was designed to look from a distance exactly like it. She also, through a series of conversations her lawyer had arranged, knew certain things about where the Heart currently was. Specifically, it was around the neck of a 26-year-old woman named Sasha, who worked in the hospitality industry and had been seeing Lawrence for approximately 14 months. Sasha had been told that the necklace was a gift. She had been told it was a family piece Lawrence had inherited from a great-aunt. She had been told it was worth around $40,000 and that she should take good care of it. She had not been told any of the true things. Miriam did not know how to feel about Sasha, exactly. She tried to be honest with herself about that. There was anger, yes. There was the particular sting of knowing the shape of the lie that had been told in her direction. But there was also something more complicated, the recognition that a 26-year-old woman had been handed a story and had believed it, the way you believe things when you're 26, and someone older and more certain tells them to you with confidence. Miriam had been 26 once. She remembered the texture of that credulity. She decided she would not make Sasha the primary target of her evening. The Hotel Vancouver in November is a particular kind of beautiful. The ceilings are high enough to make the chandeliers seem like they're floating, and the crowd at the Harbor Gala tended to dress accordingly. black tie, serious jewelry, women who understood that the right earrings could communicate an entire paragraph. Miriam arrived at 7:15 in a deep green Valentino that she had bought for a different occasion 3 years ago and never worn, and Piper met her at the entrance, looking like someone who had been waiting to witness something. "How are you feeling?" Piper asked. "Focused," Miriam said. "That's somehow more frightening than if you'd said nervous." Miriam took her daughter's arm and they walked in. She spotted them within 10 minutes. Lawrence was near the bar, looking well in his dinner jacket, the careful ease of a man who did not yet know that the ground had already shifted beneath him. He was with Sasha, who was wearing a floor-length gown in champagne silk, her hair up, her throat lit by the Lacroix Heart. Miriam paused. She looked at it. Even from across the room, she could see the quality of the rubies, the depth of color, the way the old-cut diamonds caught the light differently from modern stones. 30 years of wearing that piece had made her familiar with its exact character. Her grandmother had worn it to every occasion that mattered. Miriam had worn it to her own wedding. She looked at it for 3 seconds. Then she straightened her shoulders, reached up and touched the replica at her own throat in a gesture that was deliberate and calm, and turned to greet someone who was calling her name across the room. What happened over the next 90 minutes was not a scene. That was what people would remark on afterward. How not a scene it was. Miriam worked the room the way she always had, efficiently, warmly, with the specific social ease of someone who has attended these events for over a decade and genuinely likes most of the people in them. She spoke to the Gala chair about the youth literacy program funding. She had a 15-minute conversation with an old friend from the Ashford Trading, early days, who was now running a foundation out of Calgary. She accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server and thanked them by name because she had made a point over the years of learning the names of the hotel staff. Lawrence did not approach her. This told her something. At 9 o'clock, Miriam positioned herself near the silent auction tables, which were situated along the east wall, and waited. She had arranged, through a mutual acquaintance, for Sasha to be directed toward the auction items at approximately this time. The acquaintance did not know the full shape of what was happening. She only knew that Miriam had asked her to make the introduction, and she had agreed because she owed Miriam a favor from a long time ago and had never been asked to collect on it before. Sasha came around the corner of the auction table with a small smile and the necklace at her throat, and found Miriam Ashford standing there looking at the same item, a watercolor of the inlet by a local artist, estimated at $3,000. "It's lovely, isn't it?" Miriam said. Sasha agreed that it was. They stood for a moment in the easy parallel quiet of two people considering the same thing. And then Miriam turned and looked at her, not with confrontation, not with the theatrical weight of a scene, but with the specific, settled attention of a woman who has decided exactly what she is going to say and has no fear of saying it. "That's a remarkable piece," Miriam said. Her eyes moved to the necklace. "The ruby is extraordinary Burmese, if I'm not mistaken." Sasha touched it. "I think so, yes. May I?" Miriam held out her hand, and something in her tone, calm, authoritative, entirely without threat, made Sasha lean slightly forward. Miriam looked at the setting from about 6 inches away. She did not touch it. She looked at the platinum work around the clasp. "Beautiful," she said. "My grandmother would have appreciated it." Sasha looked at her. Miriam smiled. "The real kind, not the other one." "I'm Miriam Ashford," she said. "I think we should find somewhere quieter to talk. There are things you need to know, and I'd rather you hear them from me." They sat in a small lounge off the main corridor. The sound of the gala, a soft ambient murmur. Through the walls, a server brought them tea without being asked. Miriam told Sasha the truth, not all of it, not with every forensic detail, but the essential truth. The necklace's history, its name, her grandmother's story, the replica in the safe at home, the jeweler who had authenticated it, and the fact that what Sasha was wearing had been acquired using money that had been moved out of accounts belonging to Ashford Trading without authorization. She did not say Lawrence's name in an ugly way. She said it the same way she said everything. That night, factually, without decoration. Sasha did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, "He told me his great-aunt left it to him." "I know," Miriam said. He showed me a letter. Her voice had changed. Younger somehow, confused. A certificate of authenticity. Both fabricated, I expect. Stephen, my accountant, has the documentation. Another long silence. I didn't know, Sasha said. It was not a plea, it was a statement carefully made, addressed to the floor. I believe you, Miriam said, and she meant it. What happened next was something Miriam had not exactly planned for, though she had thought it was possible. Sasha reached up, unclasped the necklace with hands that were not entirely steady, and held it out across the small table. The rubies caught the light from the wall sconce and threw a faint red across the white tablecloth. Take it, Sasha said. Miriam did. She held it in her palm for a moment. 23 years of evenings, her grandmother's hands, her own wedding day, and then she unclasped the replica from her own throat and set it carefully on the table between them. Keep that, she said. It's well made, and you should have something to show for your evening. She stood. She fastened the Lacroix Heart at her throat. She looked at herself, briefly in the mirror above the console table by the door. Then she walked back into the gala. Lawrence saw her the moment she re-entered the room. She watched it happen, watched the recognition travel across his face in stages, from polite social awareness to confused attention to something she could only describe as a man understanding, all at once, that he had made an enormous miscalculation. His eyes went to her throat. Then they went to the corridor behind her, then they went back to her. Miriam kept walking. She returned to her table, where Piper was waiting with an expression that contained about 7 different things simultaneously. Miriam sat down, accepted a glass of water, and looked at the centerpiece for a moment. White ranunculus, she noted. Very nicely arranged. Well, Piper said quietly. She gave it back, Miriam said. Piper said nothing for a moment. Then, and him? He's about to have a conversation with people from the RCMP Commercial Crime Unit, Miriam said. They've been waiting on my call. I said I'd confirm. The necklace was recovered first. She took out her phone. She sent a text. Tonight? Piper said. It seemed like a natural moment, Miriam said. What happened to Lawrence in the months that followed was a matter of public record. Because these things tend to become public record, especially in a city the size of Vancouver, where everyone in certain industries knows everyone else. The charges were serious. Fraud over $5,000, breach of trust, theft. His lawyer was expensive. The proceedings were not quick. None of this made Miriam happy, in the way people sometimes imagine justice makes you happy. There was no triumph in it, particularly. There was the satisfaction of having handled something correctly, of having not flinched, or acted in desperation, or said things she would later regret. There was the quiet, durable knowledge that she had protected what was hers, without destroying herself in the process. There was also the divorce, which was straightforward in the way that things become straightforward when one party has committed crimes, and the other has documentation. Miriam kept the company, which had always been the company. She kept the house, she kept the necklace, obviously. She sat on the Harbor Gala Committee again, the following year. She chaired a new subcommittee focused on expanding the youth employment program into the downtown east side. She hired a new VP of business development, a woman named Catherine, who had come recommended by 3 people Miriam trusted, and who had, in her first week, identified a vendor relationship that saved the company $80,000. Miriam took her out for lunch and told her she'd made a good start. The Lacroix Heart stayed in the safe, in its gray velvet box. On special occasions, the kind that warranted it, Miriam would open the safe, take the box out, and hold it for a moment before putting it on, not from ceremony, or sentiment exactly, but because her grandmother had carried it from Montreal to Vancouver in the hem of a winter coat, through a season of uncertainty, toward a life she was building without a map. And there was something in that worth remembering.